This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get fly. I got 6 jobs. I don't get time. I don't get time.
And we are still not tired at all on episode number 25 of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Jerome Churko, alongside my usual sidekick and partner in crime, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, great to see you. Welcome to the weekend. Always a fun chat. And today, my goodness, I'm greatly looking forward to it. I'm a huge UFC guy. You know, back in the day when it kicked off, I got into it, big into pro wrestling, big into the UFC, and I'm looking forward to the chat today. 2 in-studio guests, big timers here, and UFC fighter and the best damn welterweight on the planet. I got that from your Twitter bio. Yep. Bobby Nash. Bobby, welcome. And Arthur Palac. And Arthur, you are his boxing trainer.
That is correct.
Arthur, Bobby, thank you much, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
Now, Bobby, upcoming ahead for you in July is a fight that you're looking forward to in Scotland. Your second fight overseas. It's great to have you in here for this episode. Looking forward to your fight. So we asked and talked to you a little bit off the air about your training, but at this point in time, where are you at in your preparations for a big fight, your second in the UFC?
Where am I? Right now, I'm just focusing on just fine details. This guy's a southpaw. He's a striker, so I'm working on, things that are going to work for him. He's a boxer, so I'm working a lot with Arthur. I'm getting a lot of cool input and ideas from him. I'm working a lot of footwork, but I'm also really going to engage in a lot of wrestling. So right now, my focus is basically just a lot of drilling and getting in shape.
And Bobby, I should have said Bobby Nasty Nash.
That's right.
Now, where does that nickname, by the way, come from?
Nash. Every time I wrestled, everybody like, oh, that's nasty, and it kind of just came up with Nasty, and Bobby Nash, Nasty it just kind of stuck. Everybody was calling me Nasty back in college, and it kind of just stuck, and I liked it.
And now your first fight, UFC fight, it came by accident due to an injury.
Yes.
Now you didn't get to train for the opponent, or really get to study him.
No.
So what was that experience like?
So my first fight in the UFC was on about 2.5 weeks' notice. I got the call. They're like, hey, this guy Li Jingliang from China, one of the number one fighters in China, they needed an opponent. His opponent got injured. When the UFC calls, it don't matter if it's a day notice, 2 weeks notice, it doesn't matter. You say, yeah, let's go. Like you have to, you can't just be like, oh, I'm not ready, because they're not going to care about you then. So I stepped up, I took the fight. I had a really good showing. I dropped him with a left hook in the first round. Had him in a really deep chokehold. The second round, I had him hurt. I had a lot of nerves going into the fight. It was 20,000 people in the arena. I gassed out because of altitude, and he caught me in the second round and knocked me out. But, I had a really good showing. Dana White really liked it. The UFC really liked it. And now they gave me a full 10-week camp. So I'm excited to have a full camp and show people what I'm all about.
Now, what did that first bout teach you, by the way?
It taught me patience, because I'm a very aggressive fighter. But I think what that taught me is patience. It matured me as a fighter. And, just being in that limelight. Relaxing. I think this fight, you're going to see me a lot more relaxed, me taking my time, me, analyzing situations and picking my shots.
And now you brought up patience. Patience is a big time virtue, by the way. And Arthur, I saw on your website too, part of your coaching philosophy, it says patience, persistence, determination, and the continued drive to become better. Now, how did that become part of your coaching philosophy?
It's just as when I was a boxer, one of the things that we've always realized is that the best fighters in the world are the people that always stick to the game plans. I get it, things change, but some of the best boxers in the world, they have the patience and the determination to stick with what they have to do. And if I go into a fight and I have to adjust, I still have the patience to adjust and move forward. And that's why when I think of coaching is you don't climb a mountain running up the mountain, you climb it step by step. And that's just like with learning anything else. I mean, when a kid learns to walk, they crawl first, they have the patience, then they start walking, and then eventually they start running. And that's the same thing with any type of combat sport. You need to learn the basics and the fundamentals. And if you don't have patience to learn the basics and the fundamentals, nothing's going to help you.
Now, Bobby, you're an East Side guy.
Yeah.
Take us through your love of mixed martial arts, and did you grow up with doing like karate, mixed martial arts, as a youngster growing up here at Roseville, Michigan?
Yep, grew up in Roseville, Michigan, just a blue-collar family. I have 3 brothers and a sister. I have a big family. I started off wrestling when I was 5 years old. So, I mean, when it comes to combat and just all that training, I've been doing it since I was a little tyke. Through there, I wrestled, went to high school, won a high school state title, got recruited, went to Michigan State, wrestled there for 4 years, got my degree, wrestled in the U.S. Open, wrestled some very high-level guys in that tournament. Didn't do too well. Found MMA, went amateur, went pro, and the rest is just history, man. I've been, like I said, since I was 5, I've been competing, and now this is my outlet to continue to compete through mixed martial arts.
And you were pretty darn good.
Yeah,
in high school, all-state wrestler.
Oh yeah, I was very good. I went 60-1 my senior year. 60-1 my senior year. Won a state title. So yeah, I had a very, very good career.
So now, mixed martial arts and wrestling, how are they different and how are they similar to one another?
Well, they're similar because with wrestling, it's high pace, a lot of cardio. Fighting obviously takes a tremendous amount of cardio. And in a fight, if I need be, I can take this opponent down. Obviously with striking and, if I'm on top of them or if someone's on top of me getting punched, that's a little different. But with the mindset, I've been cutting weight my whole life. I've been training one-on-one, competing with another human being since I was a kid. So it translated very well into martial arts. Like I said, competing since I was 5 years old against another human being, it's going to translate well. Like I fight people, that's why I think I'm having a lot of success because I'm just comfortable with competing. So yeah, it translates, but obviously with the striking, there's a little more danger to it.
How much different do you think the one-on-one competition is from team competition, team sports?
There's a lot more pressure on you with one-on-one. I played football, and when we would lose, I was like, oh, we lost. When I lose a fight, there's no one. It's just me. That man beat me. It's a hard pill to swallow because to me, I feel like he's a better man than me. He beats me. He's a better human being than me. He's a better man than me. And I can't rely on anyone else. It's my fault. And that's, a hard pill to swallow. And it humbles you a lot.
It's more of a devastating blow,
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Now, growing up watching mixed martial arts, you now see, as you're coming up, the evolution of mixed martial arts from where it was, where there were not many weight classes, it was tournament style, to the evolution where now, the UFC is it. It's the major organization. It's where every fighter wants to be. Which fighters did you kind of grow up and model yourself after, or did you look up to, when you kind of came up?
Growing up, I watched Matt Hughes. So I was a wrestler, right? So I always watched the wrestlers. I liked Johnny Hendricks growing up. I liked George St. Pierre. He didn't have a wrestling background, but he had a wrestling style. And I really liked Matt Hughes. They were college wrestlers, so I really looked up to them, and that was like, hey, these are college wrestlers who are having a lot of success. Maybe I'll dabble with this and see how I do. And it wasn't too bad.
Now, in your training, how did you come to work with Arthur?
Well, it was funny. After my last fight in the UFC, I lost by knockout. I stood up like pretty much the whole fight. And my boxing needed a lot of work, and I was with my buddy Phil Cozine. His dad actually knows Arthur, and he's like, hey. I know this guy. He was on the world team for boxing. Give him I want you to come on a call him, see what he's all about. So I gave him a call. I'm like, hey, I know you're right down the road for me. I'm thinking about getting some working with me. At the time, I called him. I don't even think he knew, he knew anything about it. He's like, oh yeah, cool. You come on through, blah blah blah. And I'm like, listen, I'm really trying to train. I'm serious. I'm trying to train. So okay, cool. I come in and I think he realized that I was actually game time, And I loved what he was showing me. Everything. We started on some just typical small little basics, but I advanced really quick and I was learning a lot. And I'm really happy I ran into him.
How's it working together? And I guess, Arthur, we'll let you talk here. I know Bobby's done a lot of talking, so let's get you involved.
I mean, the show's more about Bobby than it is about me. I'm just a support system for him. For a coach or anybody to see somebody go from not knowing how to move from left to right or not knowing how to properly throw a jab or a right or an overhand right, and then to see it now all come together is crazy. And, putting in the hard work of I knew when he first came in, his stance was way off. So that was the first thing that we had to work on footwork. And now to see him, automatically get in his boxing stance and move back and forth, like it's second nature to him is crazy. And then the other thing, my dad came in the gym a couple of days ago and we're working on body shots. And I think we've worked on body shots maybe a handful of times before. And just to see how crisp and clean those body shots were that he was executing was unbelievable. Like my dad said to me later in the day when we were having dinner, he says, man, he's made a huge improvement with his body shots. And for me, that's awesome because, it's one thing when you train somebody and you help somebody out and they don't progress or they don't put the time or effort into it. So you get kind of a little bit discouraged. But at the same time, I can only show you the way, you have to walk that way. And that's how I look at it when it comes to coaching.
And you see Bobby now getting something out of it, obviously.
Oh, without a doubt.
And how has it been for you working with Arthur?
Well, working with Arthur has been awesome. I really notice in my sparring things that he's showing me translate very well. The jab to the body's been working really well. We've been specifically training for southpaws. So my overhand right has been landing, my uppercut's been landing, and a lot of what he is showing to me is starting to make sense. At first, it was like, okay, I don't really understand the concept, but now I'm trying it in sparring, and the concepts are making sense to me now. So, I'm seeing a lot of improvement, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see me in the cage because you're going to see a lot of all my coaches, what they're showing me, it's going to be a resemblance in the cage.
And going to Scotland for the fight.
Yeah.
What the heck will that be like? What are you expecting right now?
Well, I know the Scottish fans, they're rowdy. It's not so they do a lot of chanting. So it's a lot of chanting. This guy, he's from England, so it's just south of him. So he's going to have a lot of fans. So I'm expecting to be in his backyard with a lot of fans, a lot of chanting. But that's fine. The last time I went into someone's backyard, it was Luis Gonzalez. He was 11-2. He was a UFC veteran. In his backyard, I went there and knocked him out round 2, and I silenced the crowd. So that's what I plan on doing.
And that motivates you, right? You want to beat somebody when they're being chanted for and rooted on, and you're the underdog.
I always say, man, it's awesome having thousands of fans rooting for you, but it's even better when you have 1,000 fans rooting against you. I love it.
Now, your record overall is 8-2, overall mixed martial arts record. Take us through your very first professional fight. Where was it at? What was the result? And, obviously that first time around is a time where probably you're very nervous. You're excited to, mix it up and see what you got. Take us through your very first professional mixed martial arts fight.
My first fight ever was at Crystal Gardens in Southgate, Michigan. It was for WXC. I fought Jay Jackson. Tough guy, super athletic, very strong. Didn't stand up too much with him. I took him down, took his back, ground and pound. 4.5 minutes into round 1, I submitted him with a rear naked choke. So that was the beginning of my pro career.
And after that, you're hooked. You're like, okay, I think there's a future in this. I'm going to keep training. Now, you're training into that first fight. Was it overall, with a strong emphasis on wrestling, or did you have a full camp going into fight number 1?
I had a full camp, but I just graduated from college. I was training mixed martial arts through my college wrestling career, but for the most part, I didn't have hands. I didn't know how to kick. I had a small understanding of jiu-jitsu. I was just a very tough guy who was a really good wrestler and just liked to fight. Like, that's what I was. And now, it's really cool to see the progression from then to now, because now I feel like I am a true martial artist. I have an understanding of boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and I'm not to where I want to be, but I feel like I'm in the right direction to become a full-on fighter, like full martial artist, and it's exciting.
Now, you said the UFC called you. They called you directly, and who spoke to you?
They called my manager, which is Gerald Grube.
Okay, they called you and said, okay, we got this fight, and you had an opportunity to take it on short notice. Was there any reservations at all to say, look, I know you said that when the UFC calls, you jump, but was there any reservation at all just due to the fact that the fight was on short notice, being that you are going to go into the Ultimate Fighting Championship?
Well, when they called, I was excited. I knew it was in Denver, and I knew it was on 2 weeks' notice. But that didn't matter. Like I said, the UFC calls, it does. I was always told when the UFC calls, you take the fight. You always take the fight. So, if some promotion down the road is like, hey, we need you to fight. I'd be like, hey, screw off, you know. But when the UFC calls, you take that fight. So I was excited. I was super pumped about it, and it was a great experience.
So take us through that night in Denver, walking to the octagon. What's your music, and what's it like to walk into an octagon to fight in the UFC?
I tell everybody this. That was the coolest experience of my entire life to this day, was walking out into the crowd of the UFC. Since I first stepped foot in the cage, my dream was to be in the UFC, and my dream is to be a UFC champion. And walking out to the cage with 20,000 fans filled in the Pepsi Center with millions at home watching, it was a humbling experience. It was amazing experience, and you know, I was living my dream at the moment. I was living my dream, and I was walking out. And I remember seeing my family on the side. Words can't even explain how I felt. It was amazing. It was a great experience, and I can't wait to walk. I think that's the coolest experience, is walking out. You're just jumping up and down, and as soon as you walk out, you just have thousands of fans. It's not 500, 200, 300 fans that I used to fight in front. It's thousands, and it was pretty cool.
So many will say it's an adrenaline rush, one that you can become addicted to.
Oh yeah. I'm an adrenaline junkie. There's no doubt about it.
Is it comparable to anything at all being in the octagon? Because I can tell it's surreal for you when you walk into the octagon.
Being in the octagon, I just pretty much have tunnel vision. I'm very focused. And after I leave the cage, I'm almost like high. I feel like it's like a high. I'm just like, vroom, 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 vroom. I can't really explain it other than the fact that I'm high, you know?
Now, you said after the fight, you had a conversation with Dana White directly. What's been your interaction with the head of the UFC?
Oh, I didn't have an actual conversation with him, but after the fight, there was a press conference, and he gave me a shout out. He says, Bobby Nash, Lee Jingling fight, that was the fight of the night, great fight. And he actually, he enjoyed it so much that he decided to take care of me a little on the side, so that was kind of nice.
How mentally tough do you have to be to enter the octagon, to embrace it fully, and just, I mean, simply to be a UFC fighter? How mentally tough do you have to be?
I think that's a huge part of the fight game. I was 14-0 as an amateur, and I'm 8-2 as a professional right now. I don't think I'm the best fighter in the world technically, but I know I'm the toughest, and I know I have a strong mental game. I know I'm willing to go very dark places in the cage, and the mental toughness, it's 75% mental in this game with any one-on-one physical sport. The mental side of the fight game is huge, and I believe I have a very strong mental game.
Arthur, how big of an aspect do you believe that is, too, in one-on-one competition, and, I mean, specifically in the UFC?
I think whether it's in the UFC or in the boxing ring or any type of one-on-one combat sport, it's all in the head. I mean, that's where it all begins. You have to have either something wrong with you or a special genetic trait in your DNA that gives you that ability to walk in, and people will say, "Oh, it's a boxing match," or "Oh, you're going in for a mixed martial artist." No. At the end of the day, you're going into the ring octagon with somebody, and you're going to fight with them. And at the end of the day, it's something that's savage, brutal, but at the same time, it's extremely skillful, and if you don't have the right mind or the right capacity, you'll fail. And you see a lot of people that have the best genetic traits, extremely well built, and they'll go in there with somebody that looks like they just walked off the street. I mean, a perfect example of that is Fedor. I mean, if you've seen that guy compared to everybody that he's fought in Pride, I mean, back in the day, yeah, right. But it's the mental game that plays such a huge factor in your success in a combat sport, because it takes a special individual to get in there and literally try and beat the shit out of somebody else.
And something, I mean, with that being said, has to trigger, I mean, something has to be triggered inside of your head almost to have you go off and to be that savage, because it's really the definition of being a savage is being a UFC fighter or embracing this mentality and this kind of competition, it seems like, to me at least, too.
So I think that's where the beauty is, because people think of it more as a savage act, but it's really, I get it, because you see the blood, you see the broken faces, the broken noses, the broken hands, and you think it's so savage, but that's like the 15 or 20%. The 80% is the mental thing that happens of How do you know when to take this guy down? How do you know when to hit this guy? How do you know when to block this guy's punch, block this guy's kick? There's so much that is going through your mind that an average person that's never been in that will never understand that, because they only see what's going on from the outside, but they're not seeing it through the eyes of the fighter. And that's something that you can't experience unless you get into the octagon.
Hyper focus.
Yeah.
You're hyper focused. That's the way I put it. You're hyper focused.
You can be a physical specimen, be physically shredded, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
No.
I mean, that helps out, but the mental game is a large
Very
portion
large.
of it.
Very large.
Now,
Yeah.
Bobby, you're fighting in the welterweight division.
Welterweight, 170 pounds.
Now, normally, where do you usually walk around at? What's your walk around weight?
Right now, I'm about 185 pounds. If I get out of shape, I'll get about 190. But yeah, about 180. I'm about
Okay.
185 right now.
Now, everyone's curious about, when they talk about wrestlers and fighters in the UFC, about the process of cutting weight around the time of the fight. So obviously, a couple days before the fight, you have the official weigh-in, and then you got to get down to 170. Within reason, 170 and a half, they'll let it slide. But now for you, what's the process that it takes for you, about the time that you walk into a fight and by the time you get down to 170? How do you cut the weight?
Well, right now I'm at 185. I just made the transition to start eating clean. So I'm going to be eating clean right now. Through my training, I'll probably get to 180 pounds. I usually cut from about 180 to 178 to 180, and I'll cut all water. It's about 8 to 10 pounds of water, which I can lose in about 24 hours if I need be. And then I'll make weight, and I pretty much just hydrate the next day. So a lot of it's water weight. A lot of it's diet. The first 6 to 8 pounds is diet. Then from there, it's just water. And then I'll make weight. The next day, I'll probably go in the cage between 182 to 185 pounds.
Have you ever had a time where you've had a real tough cut, or a situation where maybe you lost a little bit too much weight, or had a cut where the next day where it was fight night and you had a tough time with it?
In fighting, I have not. In wrestling, I have, though, because in wrestling, I wrestled 165, and that was so tough for me. And you got to remember, in wrestling, I'd be weighing in at 6 and competing at 7. So I would lose like 4 or 5 pounds the same day I would compete. And then what I would do is I'd get a bagel, put some honey on it, eat that, get some Pedialyte, smash that, have some fruit, and I go and wrestle. Now I have a whole 24 hours to recover. So I feel amazing when I go into the cage. It's awesome.
Now, if you win July 16th, do you stop this clean eating at all? I mean, if you to celebrate, is there any sort of that in the back of your mind about what you do?
I'm very disciplined.
Uh-huh.
But after my fight, I'll enjoy myself a little bit.
Well, you should. Now, what kind of food would that entail, by the way, for you?
For me, I'm not much into junk food, but I'll have macaroni and cheese, steak, mashed potatoes. I like hearty food. I'll have some burgers.
Okay.
A lot of stuff on the barbecue. Have a couple of Oberons with my buddies. A couple beers. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'll be doing.
Now, with the UFC, obviously the contracts are structured where at any time the UFC can say, okay, you know what, maybe you've lost a couple fights in a row. Maybe you need to go down and train a little bit more and fight somewhere else before you come back to the UFC. Do you find that the pressure to win in the UFC is a good thing to keep you sharp in fights, or is it really tough knowing that at any time your livelihood can be taken away by really any arbitrary means, affecting your livelihood?
It's definitely puts a lot of stress on you. This fight is very important. My last fight I lost, so I got to win this fight. So it puts a lot of pressure on me, but I don't mind the pressure. Like I said, I've competed. I've wrestled in the US Open. I've wrestled in Big Tens. I wrestled some of the best competitors in the world. I fought on big stages. So the pressure's nothing to me. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to run through Danny Roberts.
Now, the champ right now, Tyron Woodley. Yep. Tell us a little bit about him. What skill set does he bring to the table being the UFC welterweight champ?
Tyron Woodley is also a wrestler out of Missouri. So he is a college wrestler, has a good wrestling background. Hits like a truck, extremely athletic. Tyron Woodley is 5'10", and I see a lot of weaknesses in him because I know I have about 4 inches reach on him. I got about 2 inches of height on him. I feel like I could stick and move. I personally believe that I match up well with him, and that is a fight that maybe in the future that will happen. But Tyron Woodley's 33, I'm 27. I'm the future of the sport. What's going to happen when I'm 30? He's going to be 36. I'm going to be weathered. I'm going to be better, and that's when I'm going to make my title run. That's when he's going to be out.
Now, you brought up how you went to MSU. How was wrestling in the Big Ten, by the way, for you?
Wrestling in the Big Ten, there's no conference in the world like it. It's the toughest conference in the world, 100%, without a doubt. So wrestling in the Big Ten, it prepared me to compete with the best in the world right now.
No doubt about it. So obviously you're a fan of the UFC. It's quite obvious.
Yes.
You're hyped. Tell me some of the fights that you've watched and gone, wow. Because obviously being a fan, the experience of going out with the boys, sitting out, 10 o'clock, waiting for the card to start. Sometimes you can watch some of the pre-show action starting at 8 o'clock. But when the pay-per-view starts, you're laser focused and you wait for some great knockouts, great submissions. Tell me some of the fights that got you excited and riled up that tell you, man, I'm a fan of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm in the UFC right now, but I'm a fan, and I will be a fan, through and through. A fight that I really, really like, and if anyone hasn't ever seen it, it's Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler. I don't know if you guys saw that fight, but that was an amazing fight, and it was all heart, went all 5 rounds. They took some heavy shots. Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor is an exciting one. Any Conor McGregor fight is really exciting. I'm a big fan of his, and those are the two I like, really.
What's been your experience with judges? I mean, a lot of people will say, and Dana White will repeat it probably until the day he dies, is never leave it in the hands of the judges. Go out there and swing and try your absolute best to win the fight either via submission or technical knockout. What's been your experience with judges and things like that? Because for the most part, it feels like UFC, does a decent job, but there's been some controversies as of late in regards to some of the judging and how they look at, the punches and things like that. Scoring is not universal state to state and things like that.
Well, I have 8 wins and 7 are by finishes, so I don't really have to worry about the judges. And I like to look at myself as a finisher. I don't like to put it in the judges' hands. And July 16th, you're going to see the same thing. I'm trying to come in there and finish Danny Roberts. I plan on finishing him within the first 2 rounds. But if it does go to the judges' scorecards, that's fine, because I plan on dominating round 1, round 2, and round 3.
So less than a month away from that fight, July 16th, what is the training regimen going to be like for you?
Right now, a lot of drilling, a lot of specific drilling for an opponent, conditioning, running, diet, and making sure I get a lot of rest.
Okay, you said you're a fan of Conor McGregor. Obviously, we got to talk about it. Before we get into the whole matchup, Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, do you think for the sport of UFC that it is, positive for the sport that, one of the superstars, Conor McGregor, is going to step into the ring with Floyd Mayweather? Because if he doesn't look good, if he's embarrassed, then does it, hurt the UFC and mixed martial arts for him going up and trying to fight one of the best premier, championship boxers in the world?
I think this is a fight for the fans. In my opinion, this is the biggest fight in the world, in history so far. Do I think you want my opinion who I think is going to win? I'll give you 2. I don't think that Conor McGregor is going to beat Floyd Mayweather in a boxing ring. We're talking about a guy who's 49-0, the best boxer in the world. Conor McGregor's not going to be able to handle him, but he's got a lot of confidence, and I love Conor McGregor because he's got a lot of confidence and he'll go in there with anyone. He's a bad dude, but
the way I look at it too is it's kind of
Floyd ain't going to step in his world.
No doubt about it. The way I look at it for me is it's really the ultimate gain for the UFC because nobody really expects Floyd Mayweather to lose. But if Conor lands that one shot, then you now have the ultimate bragging rights. You got a guy that comes in there and shocks the world and hit, that's what everyone's going to want to see is can Conor McGregor hit that one punch? And if he hits it, does he knock Floyd Mayweather out? If he does it, forget about it. UFC takes off, I think doubles in value.
Arthur, I want to get your opinion now. I've got to get your opinion. From a boxing perspective, is it a valid fight, in your opinion?
Not at all. It's not. But at the end of the day, it's what the market wants, and it's a business transaction. That's how I look at it. Floyd Mayweather is a very smart business guy. What he does outside the ring doesn't really concern me. He's not the best role model in the world, but when he goes into that squared circle, there's no one that's better than him in the last 15, 20 years. And my thoughts are this. Everybody talks about if Conor McGregor will land that one shot, that one punch, Oscar De La Hoya, Zab Judah, Medina, Canelo, Mosley. I can name every single boxer that's landed flush, cracked Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd Mayweather has gotten back up, no problem.
But did you see what McGregor did to Jose Aldo? Oh my gosh, he knocked him flush. Boom, done, out. I was there. I watched it. I literally jumped out of my seat and my chair probably flipped over backward. He did the damage. He connected, and I feel like he wouldn't take this fight. Obviously, he's been training. He could probably, at least try to get out there, and you probably assume the first couple of rounds is going to be some flurries. Don't you think that there's a chance that Conor McGregor could land one shot on Floyd Mayweather, or at least do the damage.
Yeah, he's going to land one shot, and Floyd Mayweather's going to roll with it because that's what Floyd Mayweather does. And if Floyd Mayweather does get hurt, Floyd Mayweather's going to tie him up because that's what Floyd Mayweather does. He is the best defensive fighter in the last 20 years. You know, I remember watching him when I was a kid because he boxed at the same time that my brother boxed. So I've seen him progress as a fighter, and there's not a snowball's chance in hell that Conor McGregor is going to knock out Floyd Mayweather. In my opinion, what's going to happen is, first off, frustration builds up. And when it comes to the mental game, that's the big thing. Mayweather wins most of his fights before he ever gets into the ring because he is a mentally strong fighter when it comes to boxing. And the other thing that you have to also think about is when frustration starts happening, you start making dumb decisions. And it just takes one dumb decision and Mayweather capitalizes on it. And so there's a saying in boxing, you can either knock someone out with a lucky punch or you can beat them to within an inch of their life. And so you can think that Mayweather may catch Conor with a lucky punch, but I honestly believe he's going to embarrass him for 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds. That's what I think is going to happen.
Now, I wanted to ask you, unrelated to that note, but you were interviewed by Jennifer Ann Wilson of WXYZ.
Yep.
How did that go? And was that also your first time actually doing a media appearance technically for you, Bobby?
No, I've done other media appearances. Did one with the Detroit Free Press and a couple other, but it went well. It went great. She was great. It was a great interview. And it was, I enjoyed it.
What do you think about the hyping up of a fight? Because, when we talk about Conor McGregor, when we talk about selling a fight, one of the things that fighters got to do is you got to be well-rounded in the ring, obviously, or in the octagon. But at the same time, you got to also have a little bit of gift of gab and to sell a fight. Because if you're going to be a top-of-the-line UFC fighter, if you're going to be the welterweight champ in 3 years, don't you think you got to be able to kind of spit the game a little bit and draw and sell a fight?
Well, especially in the UFC, Dana White and the UFC matchmakers, they want a guy who can market very well. Right now, Conor McGregor's out. Right now, with boxing. Right now, Ronda Rousey's on a 2-fight losing streak. She's gone. Sage Northcutt, he had hype. He's no one now. George St. Pierre's gone. They're looking for a superstar right now. They need a superstar, so marketing is important. And I know that. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to fight, and that's why I always tell people I go out there and I fight, but I'm there to entertain as well. I'm here to be an entertainer.
Now, are you allowed to pick the music that you walk out to, or did the UFC control that?
I actually am allowed to pick the music.
What are you coming out to this go-around?
Well, I have 3.5 weeks to figure it out. I'm not sure yet. So
anything that you're leaning towards, though, right now for your walk-up song?
Nothing I'm leaning towards, so I don't know yet. I want to come out something a little hard, something mean, something fierce.
What was fight 1? What did you walk out to?
It was really relaxed, actually. It was Simple Man by Leonard Skinner.
Okay, very good.
Now, let me ask you, how big of a mental edge can even good trash talking give you?
Do you feel like you ever psyched someone out by just talking to them, before the fight?
I think I psych people out at the weigh-ins. I think the fight begins at the weigh-ins. And when I'm at the weigh-ins, I make myself look big. I get right in their face. I put my hand right next to their jaw. I always tell people, hey, the fight starts right at the weigh-ins. I'm not one of those guys who kind of just like, hey, good job. I'm right down. I'll fight you right now. Let's go. Like, that's how I am. I think the fight starts at the weigh-ins, and I think I beat a lot of guys at the weigh-ins.
So at your weigh-in with Danny, what do you plan on doing?
Right there, I'm gonna let him know, hey, this is game time. I'm not your friend. I don't like you, and I'm gonna try to whip your ass tomorrow. So he's gonna see. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna put my hand right in his face. I'm gonna look at him. I might be like, hey, I'm gonna whip your English ass. I might say that. I don't know. I'm gonna say something to him, but I let him know the fight begins right at the weigh-in. So
let it all fly, man. Let the fireworks start then. Now,
Yeah.
Arthur, for you during your boxing career, were you a trash talker at all?
No, at all.
Strictly business?
Strictly business.
No.
Now, why is that? Why did you take that stance, the boxer?
I don't really trash talk either, but
you'll talk here and there. Like the gift of gab, as Doc had brought up. There is something to it, and you kind of have that.
I don't necessarily call, I won't call him out, but if you ask me what I'm going to do, I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to beat his ass. I'll say stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
That's just me.
Have you ever met Ariane Celeste?
I have not.
Man, if you ever do, snap a pic and make sure you post it because my goodness, man, if you talk about being distracted, I feel like the only thing I couldn't do is make sure I have to kind of make sure I walk to the right a little bit.
You would get distracted about all that.
I'd make a quick stop to the left and be like,
Ariani, that chick, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's a total babe.
oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But anyways, Arthur, not to throw us off by that, I wanted to ask about the trash talking and your stance on it and how you weren't. Why was your stance kind of against trash talking as a boxer?
I mean, in amateur boxing, there wasn't. I mean, we didn't talk. There were a lot of guys that talk trash. Don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, let what I do in the ring speak for itself. I mean, and that's. I always was laser focused when I fought. Before the fight, just in my own zone. I don't like to talk to people. My dad would warm me up, and I would just keep my eyes focused on the goal ahead, and that's it. That's what I would do, and that's what worked for me when I fought. Now, when you turn professional, now that's a whole different game because it's a business, and that's what it is. You need to market yourself, and whatever you have to do to market yourself, to an ethical standard or whatever, do it to make yourself some money. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to help you when things go wrong. Because that's the big problem with boxing right now is when things go south, there's no help for those fighters. I mean, like a personal friend of mine that was a teammate of mine, like Jermaine Taylor, amazing fighter. Now that he has issues with, his mental capacity and stuff like that, there's no help for him. So that's make your money, it's a business, and get out.
What do you think is the state of boxing?
I think it's super exciting right now. And think of the UFC is coming to boxing. Boxing isn't coming to the UFC. So boxing has the upper hand in this venue right now in combat sports because UFC is coming to boxing. Boxing isn't going to chase UFC. And think of the fights that you have coming up. Canelo, Triple G. I mean, that's a huge fight. And then you just had a great fight this Saturday, which was overshadowed by the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather announcement, which was Ward and Kovalev 2, which ended controversially, but at the end of the day, Ward would have still won the fight. But there's a lot of great fights that are happening right now in boxing that we didn't have 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Bobby, I got to ask you, how do you view boxing and the UFC on the totem pole?
Well, Arthur made a great point. The UFC is going to boxing, and boxing's been around a long time. But there's no doubt that the growth of the UFC and the growth of the sport and the continued growth of the sport is huge. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. And, anyone that I love combat sports, and obviously I'm a huge UFC fan, so I'm always going to lean towards there. But, they're both great sports, and the UFC is on. I think in like 5-10 years, you're going to see a big swing in the UFC and everything.
Now you guys all can see I'm in peak physical shape, but at the same time,
oh God, absolutely great shape, pristine shape.
But I've always wanted to dabble in mixed martial arts because obviously I've always been interested. I've wanted to start. So let's say a listener of ours is listening and they want to step into an octagon or they want to start training as mixed martial arts. Where should they start? Where can they look? Maybe in Metro Detroit to get some solid background in mixed martial arts. Where should the DOC get some training if he wants to?
Well, we have really good jiu-jitsu at Fuse Martial Arts. That's where I train Fuse Martial Arts. We do MMA, we do jiu-jitsu, we do Muay Thai. That's a great place. Just basically get started. If this is something you want to do, just get started. Just do it. Step foot in the door. I know a lot of people get a little nervous and all that, but I mean, everybody, for the most part, everybody's pretty friendly.
So let's say wrestling class 1, if I want to go and I want to take a wrestling class, what do you think the first class would be other than the basic workouts of like up, down, sit-ups, push-ups, stuff like that? What's a basic wrestling session 1 in mixed martial arts going to look like for me?
Well, if I were to run it, I would, it'd be fundamentals. I'd show you a wrestling stance. I'd show you a sprawl. We wouldn't even tie up. I'd show you a sprawl. I'd show you a duck walk, which is a shot. And I'd show you a wrestling stance so that you might think like, well, how does this translate? I don't get this. But after doing that for a while, it will translate.
But if you can't do push-ups and sit-ups like Doc, could you ever get into, good enough shape to actually compete?
I mean, if with hard work, I mean, why not? Maybe you can't do push-ups. You can't do push-ups and sit-ups now, but it doesn't mean you can't do push-ups and sit-ups a month from now.
Eventually, yes.
You said you want to fight via submission.
Yeah.
What are some of the submission moves that you've utilized to success in your repertoire?
Well, I have 2 guillotine submissions, 2 rear naked chokes. So I tend to attack the neck a lot. That's something that I have a lot of success with. And with my wrestling pedigree, it translates very well. But when I'm training jiu-jitsu in the gym, I'm always catching arm bars. So don't be surprised if I ever catch an arm bar in my career. I'll be able to do that. But so far it's been guillotines and rear naked chokes.
So Doc was talking about, starting to get involved with mixed martial arts. Is there a recommended age that you would tell somebody? I may know it's never too late, right? But what would you say to maybe the parent of a child that wants to get involved in it?
Well, I mean, I started when I was 5. If you want to go to the UFC, if you want to fight at the highest level, I mean, you got to put a lot of time. I mean, let's just say I put my life into this. I don't have a job. This is my job. I put my whole life into it. So if you want to be in the UFC or be at a high level boxing, anything, I mean, you're going to have to put everything into it. Like I said, I started when I was 5. So if you have your son or daughter, you have dreams of them being in the UFC, put them in wrestling.
So if it wasn't mixed martial arts right now for you, what would you be doing, by the way?
Well, I got a degree in sociology, so it's something I still look into. I'd want to work with kids. I'd want to be a counselor at a high school. That's something I look into. Be a high school wrestling coach. I like working with kids, so that's something I'd be doing. But right now, my main focus is fighting.
Bobby Nash takes on Danny Roberts, UFC Fight Night 113. It's going to air on July 16th. UFC Fight Night 113. It's going to air on FS1. Bobby, thank you so much for coming in here, sharing stories about your career. It's very fascinating, the stuff that you're into. Now, where can people find additional information about you and things that anything at all you'd like to promote?
Well, I'm very active on social media. So on my Instagram, Twitter, and my Snapchat, it's all at BNashty, B_NASHTY. So you can follow me on that, and I'll give you a lot of information leading up to my fight, training, etc.
And I know you like Conor McGregor. You admitted it, but I also saw that retweeted photo from McGregor of him giving that blow to Floyd Mayweather Jr. that you retweeted on your Twitter handle.
What was it?
You retweeted a photo from Conor McGregor where he was punching Floyd Mayweather. He had that portrait in the background.
I love,
which is going viral right now too.
Yeah. There's a photo of Conor McGregor. There's a painting of him just cracking Floyd Mayweather. I thought it was cool.
Like a mural of it, by the way. Nobody knows what it's about. I mean, follow your Twitter handle too to find out about it. But it's going viral right now and just blowing up. And McGregor's in front of it, and then it's like a mural he had done or something. That's incredible.
That's one thing about Conor McGregor, man. Everybody's saying he's not going to win. I don't think he's going to win at all. But I tell you what, he'll convince you he is going to.
He's cocky.
He'll convince you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this guy, I mean, he truly believes it. That's kind of, that makes it kind of exciting.
Yeah, when you start believing as much as I think he has, I mean, hey, anything can happen, I guess. And that's what he's thinking, and you got to think that way.
He's a world champion at 145 pounds and a world champion at 155 in the UFC, and no one's ever done that in the world, so it's pretty impressive.
Now, Arthur, if people want to train with you and get high-level training, it seems like you are in the know. You have the great, strong ability to teach people fundamentals of boxing and even to take a UFC fighter and to have the strong success to go out there and try and do some damage in the UFC. Where can they find information about you and your training?
PALAC Boxing. So Palac Boxing, or you can find me on Instagram at Arthur Palac, ARTHURPALAC, all one word.
Arthur Palac, Bobby Nash, thank you guys much for coming in today.
Thanks a lot for having us, man.
Good luck to you too, Bobby.
Thank you very much.
Man, Vito, that was unbelievable. To come to think that, from 10 years ago, I was a fan of the UFC when it took off, when Forrest Griffin had that amazing fight with Stephan Bonner, unbelievable to the heights. And to have an actual combatant, a UFC fighter sitting in the midst of you and I was unbelievable. And I think the promotions, and I think on the promotional side, us tweeting out, some people have noticed, and I kind of noticed now too, you're looking a little ripped, dude. Are you working out, dude?
I am absolutely jacked. Awesomely jacked every day of the week.
And I caught your good side too.
You caught a very good side. I like that you caught my good side there. I was kind of posing and flexing nonchalantly, and it caught me flexing. So I appreciate you doing that. Not that you intended on doing that.
No doubt about it. Let's take a quick time out. We'll come back, recap the interview. Unbelievable. I think we're both feeling like Bobby Nash, man, kind of excited to have that guy in here. He's full of energy, and you can definitely sense he's hyped, and it's going to be a great fight July 16th. Him and Danny Roberts, July 16th, UFC Fight Night 113 FS1. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Vito, the reason why we're able to have great interviews, the reason why guests respond to our emails and our inquiries to come visit us is because we have great audio and we got a great host site. Adam and I have been working with Podomatic since the inception of the project, going back to September of 2013. A host site is just a place where you host your podcast and where people can go and find it. And the reason why Adam and I chose Podomatic was it's a simple, user-friendly site that allows you to post your podcast quickly without much pain or effort. One of the first things I did, Vito, when I started the project was to Google, how do you post a podcast quickly? And the first thing that popped up, search spot number one, was Podomatic.com. If you're going to start a brand new project and you want to get the likes of a UFC fighter in here, you want to do great interviews with those that are starting new projects, similar to Craig Custance earlier this week, then you want to use a great host site. You don't want to give out links that are faulty. So Doc and Jock, Vito, Brandon, Jerry, Jason Jarvie, we all recommend one host site if you're going to start a podcast, Podomatic.com.
Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble.
And back here on episode number 25 of Two Bad Hombres, what a lovely encounter and meeting in the studio with Bobby Nash and Arthur Palac. What great guys that they were to come in here, gracefully talk with us. And Bobby has quite the story, and he exudes confidence, doesn't he? He is ready to beat Danny Roberts in Scotland come July 16th.
First and foremost, go green, go white. We support fellow Spartans here on the podcast network, and you could just see the energy that he was showing, and I think that he was excited to talk to us, share some stories, and to promote his fight. And imagine now in 3 years, we look up and Bobby Nash has a UFC title. There's a small chance, a small window. He walks through that front door because, hey, we opened the door first to let him, tell a story. He might open this door with a UFC belt. That'd be crazy. I literally would just be like, there's the UFC welterweight champion of the world, 170. Holy cow, man. I wish him all the best. And, for me personally, it's always tough to see a guy because you don't want a guy to get hurt, but you think that he's trained and he's got the knowledge and the wherewithal to protect himself at all times, and you just hope for the best. And, Bobby Nash is a cool dude.
Very cool dude. The adrenaline was rushing through him as he was talking to us. It was cool to see. He didn't even have the chance to find words at times because that adrenaline was just rushing through his body as he was talking to you and I, Doc.
No doubt about it. That was cool, dude, that we've had the opportunity now on this Two Bad Hombres podcast to talk to a champion boxer. Thomas Hitman Hearns sat here, and now a UFC fighter, a guy that's going to walk into the octagon and compete at the highest level of mixed martial arts. I'm hyped now, too, man. Get hyped, stay hyped, baby.
Roseville native, Bobby Nasty Nash. Good luck to him July 16th against Danny Roberts in Scotland. And now, I have for you guys to end this week's edition of Two Bad Hombres a bad tweet. And I mean a bad tweet of the week. And it comes courtesy of the king, LeBron James of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the NBA Finals runner-up team that he plays for in Cleveland. And he tweeted out, now this was in response to David Griffin, who served as a general manager for the Cavaliers, by the way, when they won a championship, the first ever championship won by the Cleveland Cavaliers. You know what? Griffin was the architect. And Dan Gilbert and him, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and David Griffin have decided to part ways. And LeBron James, guess what? Wasn't liking it whatsoever, and he expressed his dismay regarding that decision via Twitter. And here is this bad tweet of the week. Can you tell me how bad it is? I think he has some intent here. He tweeted out, "If no one appreciated you, Griff," as in David Griffin, "I did," he says. And he continues, "And hopefully all the people of Cleveland, thanks for what you did for the team for 3 years. We got us one." Then he has the icon of a trophy saying that we got us one championship. He did. He helped deliver a championship to the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that was dismal before LeBron got to Cleveland. And in LeBron's second stint, remember, they won a championship, and the architect of that championship was Mr. David Griffin.
Vito, is LeBron James the owner of the Cavaliers?
Seems like it at times, and the general manager and the head coach. It does definitely seem like that at times, Doc.
It is now inevitable. We all kind of see the writing on the wall that LeBron probably is going to honor the contract and probably step out on the Cleveland Cavaliers after the next upcoming NBA season. And it makes sense. I mean, in the end, Cavs owner Dan Gilbert doesn't want to pay exorbitant amount of money to the athletes. And in the end, if there's another executive that Dan Gilbert feels can do the job better, maybe Chauncey Billups, then there's an opportunity to make changes. You got to remember, yes, it's important for Dan Gilbert to try and keep LeBron happy, but he's not beholden to it. And if he lets him go, then it's simply going to end up with LeBron leaving. Dan Gilbert got his championship. He upped the value of the organization. And if he wants to sell it, he probably should do it in the next 12 months before LeBron bounces ship. But in the end, Dan Gilbert is a multi-billionaire, and he's not going to sit and listen to LeBron James try and tell him how to run his franchise. Because you know what LeBron wants to do? It starts with an S and involves a lot of dollars changing hands. And if LeBron James was the one signing off on all these deals, you got to remember, Tristan Thompson's making a boatload of money. He put together a team basically with Kevin Love and these guys. A lot of the players that are on the roster for the Cleveland Cavaliers are due to the fact that LeBron vouched for him. And so I don't think Dan Gilbert wants to keep spending money way over the luxury tax to keep LeBron happy. He got one championship. I don't think he's trying to build a dynasty over there in Cleveland. He got one. That's a miracle. They got a championship in Cleveland. So if LeBron bounces, I think it'll be more amicable this time around. Let him go about his business. I would say if Dan Gilbert was making a mistake, he's probably not showing enough respect if he decided to let go of the general manager without consulting LeBron. You probably should.
Well, the thing is, you just spoke about how he's the owner. He has the right to fire shots, to have the ultimate decision-making powers, and he does.
But you should at least tell the guy, look, I don't
he brought you a championship, the only one in Cleveland Cavalier history, and how about how dismal Cleveland has been in professional sports history and winning championships? It doesn't just happen in Cleveland. LeBron brought you one, so he went back to Cleveland to win a championship. He's already delivered on that promise. He's good to go now to jettison off to Los Angeles to play for the Lakers. So that could happen, and guess what? I don't think, you brought up maybe it ending amicably. I don't think it will be an amicable exit between Dan Gilbert and LeBron James. It wasn't the first time around, remember that. Dan Gilbert in that letter to the fans saying that the Cavaliers would win before LeBron ever won in Miami. Guess what happened? The Miami Heat won twice with LeBron there, his 4 years in South Beach with the Heat. Cavaliers didn't win without LeBron. It took LeBron going back to Cleveland to win that championship, and that might be all that they get in Cleveland. But guess what? That's why LeBron has some power over Dan Gilbert, over this franchise, and he calls the shots a little bit. He does. And this tweet, what it tells me, what it screams at everybody, I think, that knows about LeBron and the Cavaliers situation and his relationship with Dan Gilbert, it tells all of us, Doc, that LeBron is ready to opt out at the end of next season. He's ready to use that player option to go off to the bright lights of Los Angeles and to join forces with Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe to make Showtime 2.0 in LA.
Well, Vito, I think it's one of those things where now the NBA offseason has kicked off and a lot of drama. The NBA draft occurred on Thursday. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen now the rest of the NBA offseason. It's going to be a storyline going forward. LeBron and the Cavs, what's their relationship like? Does Kevin Love get traded? Does Jimmy Butler end up with the Cavaliers? It's going to be fun to see when this all shakes out, man. It's going to be fun offseason. There's been a lot of news with the NBA, and it's kicking off right now, so it's going to be all good.
How icy will the relationship become between LeBron and Dan Gilbert by the end of next season? Could become very icy. And this, I saw MSN, I think it was MSN, wrote an article talking about this tweet from LeBron. And this could be, as they put it, the cover letter of cover page of LeBron's exit from Cleveland, round 2. It really could be. This tweet, I think, started off what I think will eventually happen, which is LeBron exiting Cleveland a second time and doing it in a way that I think tells you that he truly does not like Dan Gilbert. I think it's a relationship that is not in a good state, and it's not very recoverable as well.
All right, Vito, great podcast. Always look forward to chatting with you. I hope you enjoy the weekend. I look forward to the upcoming podcast to see who may show up on future editions of Fresh Feedback or maybe some great in-studio guests like we had today. Thanks so much to UFC fighter Bobby Nash, trainer Arthur Palac. It was such a fun chat. Literally, like we always say, man, when you're having fun, an hour flew by, man. Boom, it was like that. It was a great chat.
And thanks to Bobby, thanks to Arthur, and thanks to all of you tuning in to this fine edition of the podcast, which has been episode number 25 of Two Bad Hombres. Talk to you again next Saturday.
And you can download all the podcasts on the network, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it fly. I got 6 jobs.